Hey everyone, I'm Victor Dwyer, and this is the Mind Workshop podcast, where we talk about the latest ways in order to be happy and really dive into people's brains and get their perspective on happiness. Today we have Steven on. Steven's going to give a little intro about who he is, and then we'll dive into what really makes him happy. Steven, thank you so much for joining today.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, no worries. Please give us a little intro about who you are and how you got to where you are today.
Wow. Okay. Long journey. I just turned 66 on Saturday. Um, oh boy. Dad was a doctor. Mom was a teacher. I grew up believing that I would be a doctor. Went to medical school, but on my way there, fell in love with commodity trading. So I left that. Left medical school after a year and became a commodity trader, Chicago Mercantile Exchange. And then when I sold my seat 16 years later, wanted to go back into what I would have done if I stayed in medical school, which the only kind of doctor I wanted to be was a psychiatrist. And then I learned about life coaching. So I've life coached since 1999 and done a number of other things along the way. I have a master's in education. I've got two kids who luckily live in the same area as me in Chicago. So I'm a father. Cancer survivor who's diagnosed with stage 4 melanoma in 2017. So I consider myself, and my doctors say I can consider myself one of the luckiest people alive. And right now I'm cancer free and loving every minute of life that's given to me. So that's where I am right now.
Yeah, that's amazing. I bet you know how the closer you are to death, the more you feel alive. I bet after you heard that news, I bet you were making every second count basically of I bet you felt oh, I got to make every second really count when you heard that news, I assume, right?
Well, it was interesting. I went with my sister, who's also a doctor, meet with my oncologist the first time. And the oncologist went through my family history and what contributed to my having cancer. I was not a smoker, um, and melanoma is extremely rare. And the first thing I said was, based on what you've said, I should have been dead a long time ago already. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
lucky to get cancer now. We're now talking 6 operations later, many months in the hospital, clinical trials, and you name it. But it's been a great journey. I wouldn't trade it for anything. And as far as living every moment, yeah, every moment is precious. I think I just got a wake up call at how lucky I was uh, to experience everything. You had asked me on an earlier talk about happiness. Um, Happiness is the ability to experience all of the other feelings, sad, anger, and fear, in a way of embracing all of it. And if you do that well, you'll usually be happy. So you don't have to look for happiness. It'll find you if you're aware enough of what causes you to feel everything else. So
Yeah. And I loved your definition of happiness. I've said it at least 4 times since we last spoke to
yeah.
other people. God, please give us your definition of happiness. I love it.
Well, it wasn't mine originally. When I was training to be a coach, my coach told me when I asked him what made him happy, and he said, "When I am sad, I know exactly what I'm sad about. When I'm angry, I know who or what is in the way of my feeling secure. and what I want to do about it. And when I have fear, I know exactly what I'm afraid of, and then can have a path to doing something about it. So it's all about self-awareness, and if you're that aware of what's going on inside you, and that you have the ability to reframe and pick a path, then that's happiness, that's freedom, that's knowledge.
And so many people lack self awareness these days because they don't like the discomfort of finding their insecurities, finding who they are. What would you say to someone that really wants to, like, that, like, getting in the starting stages of being self aware? What would you say to that person?
Well, normally people present a problem or an issue that's causing them concern.
Yeah.
Uh, and once they do that, they will have some almost pre-described way of looking at things. All of that is learned. We're not born with any preconception of ourself or who we are. And we take that on in response to our upbringing. So once somebody learns what they've taken from being taught, then they have a greater way of, I don't know if discriminating is the right word, but picking and choosing what fits for them. You know, what we have to do early in life is survive childhood, but we don't get a medal or certificate saying, you know, congratulations, you did that. We remain children until we have experiences that make us question how we've looked at things before. So I help people see how they've come to look at things the way they do, ask them if it fits for them, and then reconstruct or rebrand themselves in a way that fits who they are and not what they needed to survive.
Yeah, and what I recently like realized is that there really isn't necessarily a true self. That like a lot of us are like trying to find that like true self inside of us, but it really like our brain is always going to manipulate based off the environment we're around. So for example, like if I put you in a room by yourself, like if I put you in a black if I put you in a black room and a white room, your brain is going to react completely different in those two different situations. You're going to be have completely different motivations, completely different personalities, and each of just having a room difference, like the color of the room. And that's where you like there a lot of people are finding like their true self. But yes, it's important to go through those insecurities to be your most authentic person around you, but there really isn't not like this like solid identity of who you are almost. It doesn't really exist.
Right. Yeah, I think the more solid we become in knowledge of ourselves, the awareness of that around us becomes much less important. We deal with what comes along, and we become much less judgmental of ourselves, and then we can be in the moment. I think that's the key, is not looking back too much, not looking forward. It's being in the moment and reacting to what's present around you. And most of that, you know, if you're in a blank room, you're only reacting to yourself and your immediate surroundings. But otherwise, we're all in relation to whoever else is in the room, and yeah, we've got latitude, but our brains are constrained by the tunnel vision of what's already there, and we can fantasize, and we can. It's a great thing about being human. Your mind is what you allow it to be.
Yeah. And recently I've been trying to really open up my brain a little bit and try to find more peace is what I've been trying to find lately in my journey is to trying to get out of the default reality of like where like all these problems matter, and then just like having that inner peace. I've been like starting to say more healing phrases lately, meaning that like hey, you don't need to progress, like because I used to think like I had to progress in order for someone to love me, but no, it's like that's not how that works. It's like, hey, someone could love me for who I am right now, so that's what I say right now. And every single day I also tell myself when I meditate, I say, hey, I love myself for who I am. I don't need to progress in order to love myself. There's no like perfect version of myself because I love who I am right now. Another thing I've been doing is for every single body part that I have that I'm insecure about, I say one thing that I love about it, one thing that I hate about it, and then one funny thing about it. And that's actually progressed like really, really far. Like for example, like I am very like for some reason I'm very insecure about my forehead, and so what I said about it was like I don't like how it has a wrinkle. And then the second thing was what I love about it. It makes me look very manly. And the funny thing about it was that like that I look like Frankenstein with it because but think about like if a bullet couldn't even go through this thing from how hard it looks. So like there's just like funny things like that, and that like made it where I was able to really like kind of challenge those insecurities about me to eventually like love my body. Love to hear more your more thoughts about that.
Yes. First thing I thought of when you were talking was there's a great book, Don Miguel Ruiz, who wrote the Four Agreements, wrote The Mastery of Love. And the idea of changing ourselves to be in a romantic relationship is something that we find very hard to do. And basically, it's not needed. If we're able to love ourselves, and what you're describing is loving parts of ourselves that we define as concrete, whether it's the forehead or any other body part or a personality trait that we come to hold on to or embrace. Uh, that's one way of looking at yourself. The way I look at myself and others in the world is basically their essence. It's not the concrete part. It's how do I make myself feel? One of the things that I've been through in being diagnosed with cancer and thinking I have a very short time to live is learning to love myself in a deeper way and just appreciating that I can still interact. I will be very sad when time is up because I won't get to be myself anymore.
Yeah.
That's basically it. I'm not worried about what I look like. Uh, I'm married for a second time, and my wife has 21 grandchildren, and
Wow.
one that I met uh, had flown in from Tampa with his mother. He was 8 years old, and he asked me how old I was. And the first time he spoke to me directly, I'd met him before, but he didn't really talk to me. He was too young at the time. And he said, "How old are you?" And I said, "I was 65 at that point." And I said, "I'm 65." And he said, "You look 90." And I said,
Wow.
"Thank you." I said, "Thank you very much. I want to be alive at 90, but however I look right now doesn't matter to me at all. I get to talk to you right now. And that's all that counts."
Hmm.
And he was kind of struck by the answer. I don't know in what way, but he automatically wasn't thinking about my age anymore. He was engaged in a relationship.
Yeah. I love that. I love that. And I think it like take you have the way to get to that level, you have to take yourself out of your perspective of yourself, and you have to be like kind of like the observer of your thoughts, because in that scenario, if you were in your ego at that point, you would have been like you would have just said like you would have been it would have been an emotional response. You've been like, oh, like screw you type of thing. But then it looks like it kind of was more of like an observer type of scenarios. Like, okay, like I understand where he's coming from. I understand his perspective, and then basically applying that and saying, okay, cool, like let's go with this, and then
Yeah,
having a better
I'm
response.
yes, I'm a co-leader in a weekend called Path to Spirit Warrior. And the spirit part is not about religion, it's however you define spirit to be. And the biggest piece in it is learning your essence and everybody else's. And part of it is not taking yourself that seriously. You know, we all take ourselves very seriously, but in the moment, um, people get triggered. When you're talking about my response to the 8-year old, um, I wasn't angry because his experience of me is coming from an 8-year old, and I was thrilled that he was felt strong enough to address me directly, almost regardless of what came out of his mouth. So his opinion of me or his judgment of me, looking at as I was being 90, uh, had nothing to do with me. It has to do with his perception. So the idea of being able to witness both ourselves and others from where they're coming from makes life a hell of a lot easier. You know, you talked about ego. Our ego is a construct, wants us to be a certain way or fit into some kind of preconceived idea. We can transcend that by being a witness to ourselves.
Yeah, and I really believe that. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, that's pretty much it. It's very difficult to do as we get older. Being the witness to ourselves becomes easier when we realize how much judgment we're constantly doing of ourselves, primarily.
Yeah, and the reason why we judge ourselves is because like we were trained to judge that part of ourselves in general. Like for example, when when we were kids on the playground and like someone made fun of someone being fat, that we instantly knew, we put that in our brain and said, "Oh, if I'm fat, I'm going to be made fun of. I'm going to be shamed. I can't be that person." And like that's a mental construct that we developed inside of ourselves, and we build I'll call it like the worst self, where we like every single part of us that we don't want to be, and we run away from. That's the worst self. And I looked at every single piece that I find like shameful in myself, and I basically create that person. And if I find a way to love that person, then like I think that would be like one of the best ways ever. Because like for example, like my worst self would be like someone like me, a version of me that would be like fat, that would be smoking, lazy. Like those are all attributes that I find shameful in my brain, at least. And I want to take that person, like put it as a one together, and say, hey, if myself, if I ever get to that point where I have all those attributes that I hate about myself, awesome. If that's what makes me happy, I will still love myself. And really just trying to find a way to love that worst part of myself as well. So that way I'm not always running away from those shameful uh, personality traits, basically.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Um, One of the main concepts on the Path to Spirit weekend is the idea of a burden. And when you're talking about the version of your worst self, we usually think of it in negative connotations when we've been taught ways to look at ourselves. One of the toughest things to deal with is not the necessarily bad burdens, and I'll put that in quotes. A burden is a decision we make up about ourselves uh, to counteract a destructive moment, um, something that comes up as negative that we have to avoid. And one of the things that a lot of people do is perfectionism. That can lead to being, as you call it, the worst version of ourselves. Um, so the burden is a decision about a victimizing experience, and we carry that with us, and we see ourselves as needing to be a certain way, and needing to be right or needing to be helpful. It is one of the biggest burdens that we can have. And both of those will teach us to be more vigilant or want to be more informed, which is great and a virtue. At the same time, everything can be taken too far. So it's a matter of moderating the way that we look at ourselves and being able to forgive ourselves is the key to being able to forgive everybody else. We're all attempting to be our best selves, but that often it seems to be very hard to find.
And what is the first starting stages of forgiving ourselves for those type of
Well,
things?
yeah, it's recognizing that we believe that we have free will. The way I talked about it in the speech I gave once was we all think we are the central characters in our own movie, only to find out as we probably hit about adolescence, although the feelings are there before. We're born in the middle of somebody else's movie, and we were not ready. Our parents weren't ready for us, no matter how uh, ready they thought they were. And you are a product of a biological act, for lack of a better term.
Yeah.
We hope that love was the basis of it, but we're basically, an unknown quality and quantity that shows up in the middle of somebody else's movie. And we have to survive that to get to the place where we realize that we have more free will than we uh, thought. At the same time, we have very little when we're young. Most of our ideas of ourselves come from battling our parents in some way for a degree of freedom or independence.
Yeah. No. Yeah, I completely agree. And what would you say to someone as another tip that's for someone that's always having a negative mindset and constantly hating themselves? What else would you say to them as an insight to kind of help them start becoming more positive on a daily basis?
Well, I think we can only coach from where someone is at. So the way to do that is to buy in exactly with where they're at, which is what you're talking about is I'm unworthy, I don't deserve things, I'm not smart enough. And all you have to do really is say to the person, is it true? If it's true, then what? Are you just going to give up and say, and where does that come from? Where does the idea of this being who you are, where does it start from? I mean, this is basically the beginning of regression therapy. You take somebody back to where did you learn that? Was it directly said to you that you're some type of monster, or did you infer that about yourself from something that happened that you couldn't comprehend? Um, or sometimes we see our parents fight, and we pick the side of one of the parents. And as time goes on, we wish we could have reframed it or done something about it. But we might have seen it when we were 3 years old. And we keep seeing it from a broader lens of, I could have done more, when in reality, you did exactly what you could have done at the age of 3. So being able to forgive yourself again for this idea of power. There are many situations when we are powerless at the time, and just surviving it is all we can do. And that lens changes based on how we want to view ourselves when we don't have to view ourselves in anything different than the reality of what was taking place. So we can bless the decisions we made, going back and being able to bless ourselves for surviving what we did by picking the method we did at the time is one of the greatest things you can do for yourself. It's admitting we're not nearly as powerful as we thought we were in the moment. And many times it's just getting out of the situation. You know, the fight or flee response, a lot of the time, fleeing is the better response. And we might beat ourselves up for it, but that won't do you any good. It just makes you lesser than.
Yeah, and how can people improve their relationship with themselves even further? Like how can they take that the next step to really like loving who they are as a person? Because that's a hard task. Most people hate themselves.
Well, I don't know. Yeah, well, most people have the burdens. How we get out of it is basically, when we talk about integrity, being true to ourselves, we learn that from being in relation with others. We get feedback from the world all the time. And being the best version of ourselves, being who we want to be, kindness is often said to be the greatest virtue. There's so much hate nowadays. You look at the political world view. Um, Everybody's coming for a place where they want to feel as if they belong. You have to be okay with yourself, but that is only in relationship with other people. So being accepted by everyone, not that that's a virtue. People are going to accept you or not for a million different reasons that have nothing to do with you. It has to do with them. But being open to the possibility that there's something good within everyone, they may not have shown it yet. And that carries out to ourselves. If we can be the best version of who we are, regardless of what's going on around us, we'll like ourselves. It's that when we get triggered, we act out, and that's usually when we feel traumatized or chaotic or just out of sorts. We do things that we may not have thought possible, and learning to not. We talked about being a witness to ourselves, realizing before you act or before you speak, when you know you're triggered, is the best thing you can do for yourself. When you can become a better witness to yourself, you automatically become less judgmental, and you can get to a place where you accept those around you without making it so important.
Yeah. Every time something triggers me, I always like see like what that was odd. Like I feel my sensations like what that was weird. I'm angry right now, and I kind of just like analyze it, and it's like funny like for example like I the most recent insight I had is like this attractive girl was walking by me, and all of a sudden I felt my posture get better, and like my body started doing all these things. I was like, and I looked down, I'm like, I didn't do that. Like I was like, why did my body just do that? I was like, it did all these like subconscious things, and it's really funny to see all the subconscious things that goes on, and you're like having no idea that go on inside of you, and then all of a sudden when you notice it, it's like, wow, I can't believe that just was doing that the entire time.
Yeah, well, our first reaction is unconscious. We will react to something. Just you talked about your posture in view of a attractive woman. Um, our limbic system predates the cortex. So survival, again, staying away from fear is what the body does best. It's to keep us safe. So the straightening of yourself is, this is how I want to appear, regardless of what's uh, also going on inside of me, and that's a good thing. The what you know when it comes out as negative, or we start to judge it, what you did in thinking about it is what we all do, and we often need, especially when the reaction is to act out or be destructive. You talk about road rage. People get road rage. There's some people who are automatically in road rage when they get in their car. It's a war against the world. Um, if you can get to a place where nobody is behaving in a way to make my experience worse, it's just they may be in their own version of road rage. Okay,
Yeah.
and when you get to that place, it's comedic. You know how people take things so seriously, and we may at times. The trick is when you're one on one with somebody that triggers you, and this may be somebody you're very close to. Um, it's what do I want from this experience? How do I want to view myself afterwards? And what can I offer to them so that we can have a dialogue rather than a conflict. One of the things in the promo is conflict harmony. Conflict is I love conflict because I don't view it that way. I look at it as an opportunity to learn and be in a better place. And if you look at life as an opportunity and not a conflict, it's just something else to grow from, and that's for you and the other person.
Yeah, and I think everyone has valuable insights from them. Like for example, like when like let's say if a homeless person comes up and I'm genuinely going to listen to what they're saying because who knows, they might have a super valuable insight. They might be loving life as a homeless person, and that might be awesome. And I might be able to get certain like amazing insights off of that. And I don't think I'm better than anyone to not get insights. I don't look at their status and say, "Oh, this person's not good enough for me to learn anything from." And I don't. I think about like there's an opportunity to learn from everyone out there, and that you can learn from anyone, no matter what their status is, or no
If
matter what they look like. And I think that's amazing. I really do.
the,
It,
the,
it, it all takes without taking out pride. If you take out pride of your beliefs, you actually listen to the other side. So I don't have any pride in my beliefs. I could I could have one belief today. I could believe in reincarnation tomorrow. I could believe in Christianity the next day. I could believe in Judaism the next. Like I have no pride for these beliefs. Like I will believe whatever makes me happier the next day.
Uh, yes, that's what I call whatever works. I'm in agreement with you. I think we all have principles that we adhere to, and that may cause us to believe certain things, and we may be willing to fight for those. Some of those are very important. I'll just bring one up right now. I think guns are used to kill people. Period.
Mm-hmm.
That's what they do, or kill something. Um, so people don't need them. Okay, that's it. That's all there is to it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a firm believer that if adults are allowed to carry guns, then we should insist on giving all of our children guns. All right, who are we to be able to kill children, but they can't shoot back? That's the most hypocritical thing on earth. So this idea that we have to have weapons to hurt people is ridiculous. It's learn to get along, but you don't have mass murders by uh, going into a crowd and choking 100 people. You wouldn't live that long to be able to do it. So it's there are certain things or certain ideas worth fighting for, and I think that's what makes us who we are. At the same time, being able to listen to somebody with another opinion is great. It doesn't mean that we're devaluing ourselves, or it's just getting along. We can disagree vehemently and still have a society.
Yeah.
We had that before. I hope I'll probably be gone before we're in that next phase. But there are always people trying to say, "Look, we're all human. Let's get along and work together, regardless of how vehemently we think about certain things that are important to us."
Yeah, and it's important to realize that listening isn't necessarily accepting. That you can
Right.
still listen to the person, but like it's important to listen to their perspective and understand. Okay, oh, like saying, "Hey, okay, I see it from your perspective. That makes sense to me. Here's my perspective. Like, let me know your thoughts." Rather than like saying it like I guess arrogantly. Like, there's a lot of ways to like approach it when it comes down to it. But if you approach it from like, hey, that's a really interesting perspective. Here's mine, and it can go a long way on that side. I do believe that there are a set of beliefs that you should fight for, but when in a conversational or argument sense, I seems like that I strip away my pride for almost all of my beliefs when I'm talking about it, so that way I can actually listen
Mhm.
to those things. Um, so that way I can actually like understand that person's perspective. So that way, okay, like I'm in full like open mind mode where it's like, okay, I'm listening to every single thing that they're saying almost.
I One of the things that I was lucky enough to be able to do when I was diagnosed with cancer to begin with, I had uh, been substitute teaching at the time, and we went into summer, and I decided to drive for Uber, and being respectful to others while disagreeing vehemently is, in my experience, the biggest part of the job, other than getting people where they want to go. But for people that want to interact, and some of my biggest tips have come from people that I vehemently disagree with, but treat them respectfully, while maintaining, you know, uh, my side of the disagreement, and discussing it with them. Yeah, there was somebody right after vaccines came out, and the person had said, Everybody in my family's gotten vaccinated, and I won't do it." And the first thing I said, "Well, bless you for your choice." I said, "One of the great things about being in a free country is you can be as dumb as you want to be. Um, Also, as smart as you want to be. So, however you look at it is where you're coming from." And I asked him. I said, "Who would it benefit, if you don't believe in the vaccines and you think they're harmful? Who would it benefit?" And he said, "What do you mean?" And I said, "Well, if you don't believe in them, which is basically, do they work or not?" And most people are not chemists. I was a chemistry major in school, so I understand a great amount about them. But I said, you have to look at why would somebody put out something that's meant to kill you if you think it's harmful. I said, anybody that remains alive gets their power from the people under them. The idea of paying taxes or creating a system of government is for us to conform. If we're all dead, or if we want people dead, we lose power by everybody that dies. We don't gain power, we lose it. So ask yourself, who wants to harm you, and why would they? And if you can't answer that question, you'll probably come to, without any knowledge of chemistry, what is logical. And
Yeah.
there's logic behind a lot of things. People don't take the time to look at who's putting out information and saying what is it behind a bent if it's not provable. Most things are provable. It just takes a while to get there. And the vaccines are one of those things. If you look at the death count, it's definitely gone down. Why? It's because vaccines work. But there's still people that want to put out other ideas. So you can look at logic and make sense of a lot of things. It's when we don't trust ourselves to look at things and ask ourselves why are things the way they are. Usually it makes a great deal of sense, and then you don't have to buy into anything else.
Yeah. Is there anything else that's been top of mind for you lately that you've been wanting to communicate that you could have been seeing like a lot of people around you, like maybe have like a negative mindset or just like anything that's been top of mind of you with you lately that you've been wanting to talk about?
Not necessarily just lately. Most of when I do my work on the weekends or I see people that are struggling, people give us tips about who they are, and they usually use it by projecting that onto other people. Well, whether it's a way of being or the way that they want to be seen, that other people seem to usurp from them. And it's don't be so tough on yourself. Again, learn to forgive yourself for the uh, closed mind that you might often have, and realize that life doesn't have to be fought against intruders. You can just, in getting along with yourself, you get along with others better. And the second one would be in relations or a primary relationships, our spouse, others that are close to us. It's really Ruiz's one of the four agreements is take nothing personally. If you can get to the place where you realize that anything that comes to us that might incite us is not about us, it's coming from somewhere else. We can have sympathy for the other person, empathy from where they're coming from, especially if it's painful. And at the same time, say, I have my own version of the truth and I'm okay with it. So it's being, when you get triggered by somebody in a primary response with, what we talk about is uh, being able to reflectively listen. It's I hear that you are angry right now. Can you tell me more? It's is acting, not withdraw, attack, or defend. All right, that's the way of being in the world. When somebody is triggered around us and wants to bring us into it, it's don't leave the conversation and don't attack them. They're just speaking their mind, and don't defend yourself. There's nothing to defend. So living from that place of don't withdraw, don't attack, and don't defend, but being in respectful relationship, that's it. And if you
Yeah.
do that at all times, you will be happy and you'll be accepted by most people that are happy with themselves as well, or even attempting to be happy.
Yeah, I totally agree. And we actually got a comment saying, I feel like you're talking about me right now. Goosebumps. Thank you for your eye opening wisdom. So
Ah,
it's really
yeah,
nice. Yes, thank you
great.
for that.
Yes.
And unfortunately, that's all we have time for today. Stephen, please tell the audience how to find you and to get more, to get into contact with you.
Wonderful. My phone number, I'm in the United States, 847-275-6049. Call me. Um, You can also text me there and tell me that you will be calling, because sometimes I don't answer as much if it's not in my contact list, but you'll become in my contact list. And my email is coachsteve838@aol.com. And I do have spots in my coaching practice, or just to say hello.
Cool.
And
Awesome. Thank you.
I'm on Facebook as well, Facebook and Twitter, although I very rarely tweet, but I'm on Facebook.
Cool. Steven, thank you so much for joining. Thank you everyone for watching. This is the Mind Workshop podcast. We'll catch you next time. Thanks.
Thank you very much.